Welcome back everyone to part 5. Today let's start with handling the Google token refresh, because Socialite doesn't actually handle that for us, and usually the token is only available for an hour. This means that the user will always have to log in after an hour, and that's not exactly what we want to do. So let's start with this. First of all, we want to add some parameters to the redirect in here. So what's this going to do is that we are saying we want the access type to be offline, which means we will get back a refresh token. And we also say prompt, which says here consent and select account. This will actually always ask us to select an account in case we are logged in with multiple Google accounts. So we added these now, so let's also dump the Google user in here. Google user like this. So let's see what's going to happen if we go to continue with Google. It asks us again to select the account we want to use. Cool. So now we dumped all the information we get, and you can see we're actually getting some information for the refresh token. And then we're also getting the expires in value. So this is in seconds. If we're gonna say if we divide it by 60, that's going to be 60 minutes. So that's going to be an hour. Cool. So now what we want to do is we want to save these values into our database. So for that, we actually need to open our migrations again. Let's go to the migration in here. And let's add another field. Let's just copy one of these because it's going to be a timestamp. And this one is going to be called token expires at. Okay, that's good. Let's just migrate fresh. We want to remigrate everything for this project. So let's say art serve again. So we can start our server. Cool. So if we go now back in here, it means that we also want to save our token expiry date in here. And I'm just going to copy it because I already have it. So token expires at, we're gonna say carbon now, plus adding the seconds that are coming from this Google user object. Let's just import the class over here. We want to import carbon. Let's save this. Okay, cool. So now let's try again. So we're gonna say localhost 3000. Let's go in here, continue with Google. Actually, let's also open the database. So right now we don't have anything here. We can see that we do have the Google refresh token, and token expires at. So let's see if this is going to work. Continue with Google. It's asking again to select the user. Okay, so let's see in here. Now we have token expires at. Cool. So we also have the refresh token. Okay, so this works now. Let's go back to our code. Let's open the website in here. Now let's go and actually try and refresh our token. So we want to go into our middleware. Ensure logged in here, and I do have a function already that actually handles the token refresh. I'm just going to paste it in here, and let's go a little bit through it. So what's it trying to do? So in here we're going to pass the user that comes from the database, and that user has the token expires at field. So we're gonna take a look at the difference of time between now and token expires at, and if it's actually expired, we're going to call the Google endpoint to refresh the token. And since we don't really have like a package or something that handles that, we're just going to have to do a curl request. So this is how we do it. It's a post request, and we're sending the client ID, client secret, the refresh token, and we're gonna say the grant type is also refresh token. Then we send all of this. In case we have an error, we're going to return null for this function. Otherwise, we're going to decode it, and we're gonna take a look at the access token and if it's in there, we're going to set it, otherwise it's going to be null. And also we're going to update our expires in, right? So carbon add seconds is just the same as we had in the Socialite controller. Then we're going to save the user, and we're going to send back the access token. And if the token hasn't expired, then we're just going to return null. Okay, cool. So what we want now is that we want for every request that's going to happen through this middleware, we want to also add another field to the response, which is going to be auth token. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to move this user outside over here. And we're going to say we want to use the user object in here. Cool. So now we have the user, but now we also want to refresh the token in case we need to. Okay, so for that we're going to say auth token equals this refresh Google token, and we're going to pass the user in there. Okay. Now we want to actually manipulate the response a little bit, so we're going to say response equals next request. Okay, so we want to say, usually the response is a type of JSON response, so we're going to say we just want to check if the type of response is a JSON response, and we're going to import that. Okay, so now we want to say what is the current data. The current data equals to response get data. This has to be just an arrow. Okay, then we want to say current data. We want to add to it another item, which is auth token, and we're going to assign the auth token to that one. Okay, and then the response, we're gonna set the data again, and we're just gonna say current data. Okay, and in the end, we just want to return the response, and it should be current data like this. Okay, this seems to be fine. So auth token is going to be null in case we don't need to refresh it, but if we have to refresh it, it will be sent over here. So now let's try and go to our postman. Let's first get the latest token. So if we go in here, refresh this, let's take the latest token, go back to the postman, and we're going to put the new token in here, save that, and let's send the request. Okay, you can see we have the data, and then we have the auth token in here, right? So now let's go to the database. We're gonna change the date of the token expiry, right? So let's just change the hour to a couple of hours back. Let's save that. Let's go back to our postman. So now we expect this token to be refreshed, and we should get a new value in the auth token in here. So let's say send. Okay, you can see that we actually got the new value in here, and this should have also been saved in here. So if I do like this and I refresh, you can see that it did change, right? So it's not the same value as it was before. Okay, that's really cool. Let's go back to our code. So now our backend is updated with the new feature. Let's actually go and handle this on our client side. I'm just going to add some comments in here. So this happens when we were redirected after login. That's when we have the query code available. You'll also notice now that if we go to our postman, our format of the data changed a little bit. So now we have to access this data. And then we have the auth token, so let's go and access that. Instead of just user data in here, we're going to say .data. We can close this. I also wanted to add another thing in here. So if we do have an error, it means that either our token expired or we just cannot log in. So after forgetting the user, I also want to nullify the cookie that we have. Okay, let's see if this actually works now. So if we go back, let's just delete our token, our cookie, refresh this. Let's open it, and we're gonna take a look in here. So continue with Google, select our account, made a request to /me. We have all the data in here. Auth token is null, and here we have the data about our user. Now we do have this new token, but we want to replace the old token with the new one. So in order to do that, we're going to use the an interceptor for all the requests that we're making. And in order to do that, we're going to use a plugin. So let's see, let's open the plugins in here, and we're gonna call this one fetch.ts, because this is what Nuxt uses internally to do all its fetch requests. And I'm just going to paste this in here. Let's see. So the plugin, it's whenever it creates a fetch request, you can also manipulate the on response in here. Let's run ESLint on this. Cool. So on response gives us these three parameters we can use. So we have objects. So we can use request, response, and options. In our case, we are going to update the auth token in our PNS store. And we are also going to update our cookie. So what are we doing here? We're taking a look if we have an auth token, the one that comes from the request. And if that new token exists, we're going to replace the old tokens in the cookie and in the store with the new one. Okay, let's save this. Okay, now let's see if this actually works. So if we open this here, we can see our application token. It ends with A0171. So if we refresh this, we can see it's still there. Now our me request has an auth token of null. So let's go to our database, give it a token expires at, let's put a couple of hours back, save this. Let's go to our website and code. So now if we refresh this, cool, let's take a look. We do have an auth token here, and this one ends with W0171. And if we take a look in our application data in here, you can see that it also changed to W0171. Cool, so that works then. So now our frontend is going to always be using the newest token. Now, since we already have this in here, these interceptors, I also want to refactor my remote services. So you know that in here we are adding our authorization bearer in case it exists. We also add this header for accepting only JSON format back. So since we already have this auth in here, we can just add those functionalities in here. I've actually already written those, so let's just copy and paste them in here. Let's do an ESLint. Cool, so you can see that on request, it's going to get the auth token from the user store, and is going to add the headers for, is going to add the bearer token in here. And then we also have the accept header. Actually, we can even, let's put the accept header always. So we're going to add the authorization bearer only in case we have the token, and we are going to add the accept header always. And then we're also using the base URL. This is an option for fetch. We're gonna tell it the API URL that is coming from our environment. Okay, so since we have these in here, we don't need them anymore in our remote services. So I don't want to have any request services or generate URL. And in here, we're just gonna say URL. We don't need the headers anymore. Okay, but I still want to keep this in here because I like the format, and I don't need to basically write this thing every time when I want to send a request. Okay, so let's close this for now. Let's try again. If we go to, we don't have a token right now. Let's go and log in with our Google account. Select the account, come back. And of course something broke as usual. Okay, so we're setting the headers in here instead of just adding it. Let's just move this up there. Okay, so what we want to do, I think we can just spread it in here. So we're gonna have option headers. And these are the only ones that are going to be in there. And if we have an auth token, the authorization bearer is going to be added on top. So let's see now if this actually, let's just delete it again. Delete this, refresh, go to continue with Google. Go in here. Cool. So now we have all the data about our user. So this now works. Now let's do just one last cycle, see that everything actually works. So let's log out from here. Let's see our application. Cool. So let's close this. And also let's restart the server just in case. Okay. Let's go and log in. Continue with Google. Log in here. Okay, we have all our data. Let's go to database. Let's set the expiry token a couple of hours back, save it. Let's go back to our code and our website. Let's take a look. This is going to work. Yep, it worked. Now let's log out. Cool, everything seems to be working, so let's continue with the next steps. I want to start adding some middleware in order to protect our pages. So in order to do that, in Nuxt, we just create a folder called middleware. And we're going to add two things in here. We're going to say one is auth ts, and another one is going to be guest ts. Well, I already have these written, so let's just copy them in here. This is for the guest. And I have another one for the auth. Cool, so let's take a look for this. This is defining a middleware, and basically what it says here, it looks at the user store, and if it's logged in, then we want to navigate. If it's not logged in, we want to navigate it to auth, basically to tell the user to log in. And in the guest one, we are doing the other way around. So if the user is logged in and he's not allowed to access this page as a logged in user, we want to send him back to the user. Cool. So let's actually start attaching these middlewares to our pages. We want to go to our user index page. We know that this user index page is only available to logged in users. So let's add the middleware in here. To add the middleware, we just need to say define page meta. And this is going to get an object, and we just say here middleware. And we give it the name of the middleware, so this has to match the name of the file from here. And the same thing we're gonna do for the auth page. So let's go in here. We only want to allow our unauthorized users to be able to access this this page. So we're gonna say lang ts in here. Let's close this. We just copy this, and we want to say only guests are allowed to see this page. Now let's test this out. If we know that we're logged in right now, so if we go to this should go to the auth page, and auth page is protected, so we always have to be a guest in order to go in there, right? So now we click on here. We are not a guest, so we are being redirected to the user. Now, if we go back here, you'll actually notice an issue that we have. So right now, if we go in here, we can see that we're getting redirected. But if we access this page directly, you'll see that we are getting redirected to the auth page. That's because this middleware, all the middlewares are actually running before we load any page, right? So we run this middleware, but we only update the user in here. On our mounted, but the middleware actually runs before this. This means that in here we have no idea about the user. So our user in here is not logged in. It's actually a null object. So we have to fix this now. At this point, we know that we cannot use the user setup in here anymore, because we need to set up the user before any other middlewares are going to run. So we need to create another middleware that's going to run at the same level with these other ones, with guest and auth, but we need to make it global. So in order to do that, we're going to create another middleware. We're going to call it auth check, and you have to say .global if you want it to be global. Okay, so what we want to do now is basically move everything from the default template into our auth check global. So we're gonna start with one thing. I'm going to create another store, which is going to be called global ts, and we want to store our loading flag in here. So this loading flag is going to tell us if the site was already loaded for the first time. Basically, that's why we're going to use it in here. I'm just gonna copy some code that I've already wrote. So this is very simple. We're just defining a store in here. It's called global, and the only thing we have in here is this loading flag, which is a boolean. Okay, now let's just comment all of this for now, and we are going to put some code in here in the auth global. So this global one means that it's going to run for every URL we have on the website. And I'm just going to copy some code in here. This is basically the same code we had in the default template, but it's a little bit modified. Okay, let's just add the global store in here, and let's take a look what's going on in here. So this is going to run for every URL. In here we have the user store, we have the global store, we have the route, and we are looking again at the cookie. Right, it's basically the same code as we have in the default over here. So the only difference is that this is going to run every time you go to a different page, right? Because this is a middleware. We had the advantage of this only running once, whenever you started the page or whenever the template was loaded, just once, because we had the same template for all the pages we have. So because this middleware is running every time, we want to throttle it a little bit, right? So let's take a look. In case we have an auth token, we also want to check if this global store, the loading flag, is true. So if it's true, it means that this is the first time it's actually loading the website. So this guarantees us that it's only going to be run once. And then we're doing basically the same. So if we have the query code, then we navigate to the user after we get all the data about the user from the API call. And this is basically the same as we had in here in our default. Now in here, because we are missing this loading flag now, we want to get this flag from our global store. So in order to do that, let's just get it from here. So I'm just gonna copy this code in here. So what we're saying, we want to get the global store, and I think we also need to import the global store. Let's do this. So let's import it in here. And then we're storing the loading flag to a ref. Cool. So let's just delete all of this for now. Now, let's go back to our user. So we know that we are logged in. If we go to the user, we can see our data in here. But now if we directly go to this, it loads the user correctly. So now we know that the user is logged in before actually showing the page. Okay, so that seems to be working right now. Let's just close some stuff in here. Okay, what's remaining is just one single issue we have. So if we open this in here and we'll go to the console, you can see we have this warning in here. That's because it's not a good idea to use root in a middleware, so we need to fix that. So when defining a middleware, we can actually use to and from in here. So basically this is going to be where the root is coming from and where you're going. So we need to comment this line, and now we can actually get the code from the query code from one of these, so it's going to be 2 in this case, and that's going to fix the warning over there. And we also want to change this to a return, otherwise it wouldn't actually navigate to that page. Okay, let's try this from the beginning. Let's close this for now. Go to the user. We are logged out for now, so let's see if we can actually access the user. No, we went to the user and we actually got sent to this auth page. Let's log in right now. We have the user. Now if we go directly to the user, that works. If we go to auth, that gets redirected to the user. Let's open our database and let's refresh this, change the token expiry to an earlier date. Let's go back to our code and our website. Let's refresh this, and we can see again we have the user. Okay, so now finally we can try and go do something else. This was the most difficult part. Now I just want to quickly redesign this page. So let's go to our user index. Let's close this one. I've actually already done a redesign of this. I just don't want to bore you and show you how to write it all. Let's just copy and paste this, and then we'll go through it really fast. You can see that in here I have 2 new components, so I'm just going to copy those. Let's put them in here. Okay. And I've also added new colors into our Tailwind config.js. You can see we only had the primary before, now we have primary dark, danger, and danger dark. I've also changed the logic in here for when we're going to set the loading value to false. So we had the finally here before, but now we don't actually need it, because if everything goes fine, we're going to be navigated to the main page. But if we're going to have an error, we're going to set this loading value to false, so you can click on it again. So let's see how this works. If I click on logout, you're going to see that it's going to switch to loading status. And then it's going to throw us to the main page. So now if we, for example, go to user, we're going to be thrown to the auth page. We're going to continue, log in again. And here we are, we can see our user page. Let's take a look at our newly created components really fast. So we have the FMG button over here, and we can find it in here. Basically what we have is that we have a couple of props. So we have the loading, a text, which just shows the text in here. We have a disabled flag and is danger. So we have a number of classes that are always going to be there. Basically we have, we're changing the text to uppercase, we're giving it some transitions and duration for the transitions. That's what happens when you click on logout. You saw that it's a smooth transition. There's an animation where everything disappears. Now for the classes, we have an array of classes, and in case it's disabled, then we're gonna have a gray background with a white text. If it's not disabled, then we're taking a look at this is danger flag. So if it's danger, we're going to use red colors, and if it's not flagged as is danger, is going to be using primary colors. Then separate classes we have for when it's disabled or it's loading, then we're gonna have a default cursor. Otherwise we're gonna use a pointer. So the pointer is this, and when it's loading, you're gonna see that it does not switch to a pointer. It's just going to show you like a default pointer, which means that you cannot click on this button. And also on click, we're emitting this clicked event. And if it's loading, actually we can also say in here, so if it's loading or it's so if it's loading or it is disabled, so if loading or disabled, then we're not going to send anything back. Otherwise we're going to emit a clicked event. And in here you can see that we actually overwritten one class because we want to have a little bit of margin on top. And that should, when it's loading, we don't want that margin anymore because otherwise it's going to have a little bit of margin on top, but we want this button to be centered when it's loading. Then we said it's a danger, and we give it the loading status, we give it the text over here. If we change this, it's going to change. And also we're handling the logout on click event. Then we also have this input element, input component, and if we're going to go in here, we're going to look at it in more detail when we're going to use it for our forms, but for now we just need this to be disabled, so we cannot change any kind of text in here. And you can see when it's disabled, so this prop over here, and then we're going to use the disabled value in the tag. Okay, let's close these. Okay, the last thing we're going to do for today is that we're going to start our Git repo. So we're going to initialize it in here, then we're going to initialize it in here. And I'm using one client for Git, which is called Git Kraken. You can see some information about it in here. Okay, so since we initialized the repos, let's actually open it. Okay, let's start with the API. Okay, we have it in here. Now let's actually add a remote. I have GitHub already synchronized in here, so I have the integration, and we're gonna call it FMG API. Just gonna leave the same, public. This is going to create a repo for us. So if I go to my profile, let's see if it exists. Okay. So we now have it in here. Let's actually push. So let's change all changes. We're gonna call this init plus auth. Okay, this is the API. We can actually give it an alias, and this is we're gonna call this one, what was a client, FMG. Now let's open the other one. Let's go with the client next. Open this, initialize. Let's add a remote. We're gonna call this one FMG client. We're gonna make it public. Save the remote, stage all changes. We're gonna add the same message in here, init plus auth. Let's push it. Okay, cool. Let's give it an alias. I'm gonna say client FMG. And I think I forgot to actually push this one, so let's push. Okay, let's go to our profile. Let's go to our repos. Okay, so now we have a client and the API. You can actually go to this link over here, and I'll leave it in the description. Okay, as a final word, you saw that handling the authorization and authentication is not really that easy, or at least it takes a long time until you set it up correctly. That's why there are services like auth0 or Clerk. At some point probably we will implement one of those services into a project. But I hope you enjoyed this for now, and I'll see you next time.